Namaste, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining us on this edition of The Right Stand. I'm Anand Narasimhan. The government finally seems to be taking the right stand rather than looking at post-action or something which is reactionary. They are trying to preempt trouble. They do not want to put India through yet another round of social unrest and mayhem that is being deliberately orchestrated by those who belong to an entity that believes it wants to alter India's DNA, Bharat's DNA. That seems to be their core identity or ideology, ladies and gentlemen. Their intent mirrors that of the Muslim Brotherhood. They are the ones who took to the streets when Osama bin Laden was taken down by the American forces on Pakistani soil. They are the ones who, when the Muslim Brotherhood was really brought down and of course taken to task in Egypt, they were up at arms. They are the ones who have time and again paraded on the streets of Kerala in a democratic India championing the Mopla riots and the massacre. These are entities who should not have been allowed to not just blossom but also gather deep roots within our society. But today, they have their operations spread across 23 states, much to the extent that even if the top two tiers of their leadership are behind bars or under detention, the lower cadre is still able to mobilize, organize, and of course, spread mayhem on the streets, vandalize. There has been a preemptive action today, part 2 of the PFI crackdown. Once again, from midnight to dawn, it was necessary. This preemptive action, precautionary and necessary, is this all building up to an imminent ban? Let's take a look at what happened today. These were largely 7 to 8 states which are governed by the BJP or somewhere where the central administration comes into play. In Uttar Pradesh, 56 suspects were rounded up. In Karnataka, 74 suspects. In Assam, 23 suspects. Delhi, 34 suspects. Maharashtra, 47 suspects. Madhya Pradesh, 21 suspects. Gujarat, 15 suspects. A total of 270 suspects across these states, which are largely governed by the BJP. And of course, in Delhi, the central administration comes into play, and it's the Delhi police that comes under the union government. More importantly, the crackdown today was not led by the central agencies like the NIA and the Enforcement Directorate. It was done by the state police, the STF, that's a Special Task Force, and ATS, anti-terrorism squads in a lot of these states. Yes, of course, the inputs came from the center, but these people were pointed out. Why were they pointed out? This is the CNN News18 mega exclusive that we'd like to share with you here on The Right Stand. Decoding Operation Octopus Part 2. The second crackdown was driven by key intel inputs which were derived out of the first round of raids itself. The targets were identified immediately after the first round of the raids. Under the lens was this entire aspect of escalation into something that we witnessed in 2020 in the northeast parts of Delhi, the kind of rioting that was manifest, pushing to instigate communal tensions. They had started propaganda plans for even gaining not just local sympathy but international sympathy. They had already reached out abroad for financing or raising funds for legal assistance. So this is the entire legal battle they had to gather up. So they were trying to generate funds and money to push and mount a very, very big legal battle that stares at this organization and its affiliates whose members are currently behind bars, a huge number of them. So what's going to happen next? Detainees will be produced in court. They will be asked to fill bonds or sign up on bonds which assures against rioting. That means they have to take an undertaking that no matter what happens, they will not be involved in creating any act of social unrest or acting against the state or the government in play. By default, that means against India. Now, maybe released in the next 2 or 3 days. A lot of them are under detention or under preventive arrests, and they will be let out after an undertaking. But is this undertaking enough? I leave that thought with you. We'll ask our experts. The other aspect is, are we building up to a ban? Is this ban imminent? And we look at the contours of it, whether it's necessary or not, or is there a better way of dealing with it? All of that. So the government is set to ban the PFI. All preparations are in place to impose a ban on the PFI is what we are given to understand. This is Manoj Gupta, our investigations editor, getting us these exclusive inputs. Top intel sources and sources within the echelons of the government are saying the official announcement is likely. Very, very soon it's going to happen. Now, what has triggered this decision? Rioting after raids, it showed up as PFI as a dangerous organization. Then interrogation reports that links with anti-India global organizations which are working overtime via discourse, via academia, via social media, and of course with entities in India to destabilize this country from within. The interrogation reports also bid to destabilize the country comes out very clearly when some of the cadre who are behind bars now and office bearers who are behind bars have been questioned. Their associations have been linked. In fact, in the raids today also we are given to understand some of these people were found to have already established connect with some of their international counterparts, and this narrative being set. One is to draw international sympathy, create a huge furor internationally to put pressure on India, and of course locally try and generate sympathy along with creating acts of social unrest to give a perception that there is huge amount of ground support for the PFI, and what's happening is the brutality of this government led by the BJP and the RSS. That's exactly what's the narrative that's being stitched, and that's been unearthed. Let's try and get into the debate, and of course the discussion this evening. Is a ban on the PFI imminent? When we say PFI, we're looking at the entire banyan tree with all its branches and affiliates. PFI crackdown is the hashtag. Nirva Mehta, editor of India English, is with us. Ambar Zaidi, social activist and a petitioner in the Honorable Supreme Court on the Common Civil Code, is also with us. Rajinder Kumarji, former Special IB, Special Director, Intelligence Bureau, and Prem Kumar Jain, former IPS. Namaste. Thank you very much for joining us. It's the festive season, day 2 of Navratra. Somewhere it is also this festive period is bringing us good tidings in society where perhaps those who want to destabilize our country, who want to pollute our society, create social divide and social unrest, they're all being cracked down upon. A lot of people are thinking, itni der kyun wait kar rahe the? So others are thinking, chalo, finally kuch to kar rahe hain. But my first question, Rajinder Kumarji, is that should this organization and its affiliates be banned now, or should there be a little more time?
Anandjit, in fact, we are already late. This organization should have been banned, and I would say that while banning them, a provision should also be made through through the law, in preventive detention law, that the members of the banned organization like PFI would be detained for a minimum period of 3 years. 3 years. Without that, this ban would mean nothing. Today you ban, they will change the name, and in another name they will come up. See, in Pakistan, like Lashkar-e-Taiba is changing every name every day. Jaish-e-Mohammed is changing name every day. India also they are changing. In fact, if you recall, Mr. Anand, it was Islamic Seva Sangha,
yes,
which was shifted to Popular Front of India. Now, Popular Front of India, more than now, it has further shifted to Social Democratic Party of India. So they have become political party. I don't think that it is going to serve any purpose. In fact, the ban has to be made on the both PP, PFI and the Jamaat-e-Islami. Without touching Jamaat-e-Islami, whose one of the main leader is always on the channels, posing as himself as the most decent and most erudite and very reasonable person. He is the person, he is on roaming around on all the channels. They have to be banned. In fact, they are the people who are instigating for this thing. And let me tell you, we may blame others, but the reality is that the some of the radical people here who are belong to Ahle Hadith sect, they have been encouraging this type of activity. If Anandji, you recall, there, the Jamaat-e-Islami Pakistan, which is an offshoot of Jamaat-e-Islami India, it also has a student Islamic movement of India. Student Islamic movement of India, they are also, it is Islamic movement of Pakistan, Islamic movement of India, student Islamic movement of Nepal, and Jatiya Sangha in Bangladesh. They are all, these are all the co-brothers.
Correct.
They are from the same family. They derive their roots from there. So you ban one thing, they will operate in another shape. Unless there is a preventive detention act that would say that it will be sufficient to detain these people for 3 years if it is proved that at any stage they were the members of the Popular Front of India or any of its predecessor organizations like Islamic Seva Sangha. Unless these provisions are made, I would not say that ban is going to work.
Is that, sir, problems क्या है? Intelligence कहती कुछ और है, पुलिस करती कुछ और है, और कोर्ट तो सोचती ही कुछ और है. आपने तो कहा प्रिवेंटिव डिटेंशन एक्ट होना चाहिए. पुलिस पूछेगी मुझे मालूम है ये चोर है, मैं कैसे इसको पकड़ूं? मेरे पास तथ्य कहाँ है? How do I hold this person? Court will turn around and say just because you believe this person is radical does not make this person radical. You have to give the court right because the court believes you are innocent until proven guilty. Bail is mandatory, jail is optional. That's how the courts think. The cops will say, I have to, if I don't catch them with proof. इंटेलिजेंस ने इनपुट तो दे दिया, बट मुझे वहाँ प्रूफ चाहिए. प्रूफ के बिना पकड़ा तो पुलिस कोर्ट मुझे पकड़ेगी. इंटेलिजेंस ब्यूरो कहता अरे देखो यहाँ क्या हो रहा है, लुक एट ऑल ऑफ दिस माउंटेन ऑफ इंफॉर्मेशन, डू समथिंग अबाउट इट. बट दिस इज वेयर वी आर स्टक, सर. You agree with me, Rajinder ji? There is nobody who is watching this broadcast who does not disagree with you, but they all have this question. How do I put them under a preventive detention act? When you are telling me this person looks very benign, he is coming on a lot of media debates, but he is perhaps sare fasad ki jad. How do I prove this in court? And how does somebody like a Mr. P.K. Jain or a senior police officer like him go ahead and catch this person and say, तुम ही सारे फसाद की जड़ हो? आपको सब पता है, पर मैं कैसे पकड़ूं, प्रूफ कैसे करूं?
नहीं आनंद जी, इसीलिए तो मैंने प्रिवेंटिव डिटेंशन करा है. मैंने अरेस्ट नहीं करा है, मैंने प्रिवेंटिव डिटेंशन कहा है. प्रिवेंटिव डिटेंशन में यू डोंट रिक्वायर ए प्रूफ. द सब्जेक्टिव सेटिस्फैक्शन ऑफ द डिटेनिंग अथॉरिटी, दैट इन मोस्ट ऑफ द केसेस इट इज द डिस्ट्रिक्ट मजिस्ट्रेट. इफ he is satisfied or any other authority appointed under the act, if he is satisfied, the person can be detained. Of course, it is subject to the advisory board concurrence, which is to be taken as per the provisions. Special provisions can be made that in the case of PFI it will be 3 months. Advisory board consultation will be within 3 months. The proof can be certain proofs like intelligence pieces, certain record, certain scientific record can be shown to the advisory board, which is generally comprises of High Court judge. He will see it and he will then see if there is a sufficient reason for the detaining authority subject to satisfaction.
You have a point there that you have subjective approval. You can put somebody in preventive detention. When you have 1%, 2%, 5%, it's okay. The moment it is 300 people or 400 people, you imagine how the narrative spinners will evolve and start spinning narratives. They are so nimble-footed, sir, that within 2 years they were able to come back from saying that Campus Front of India is an integral student wing of the PFI to come back on TV debates, including my debate, to say Campus Front of India has got nothing to do with PFI. They are so nimble-footed to evolve their strategy and change their course that in the High Court they said hijab is an essential religious practice, and in the Supreme Court they are saying don't treat it as an essential religious practice, but look at it something that is important in the cultural practice and practice of Islam. So they modified the words. They are so nimble-footed. Now, my point is, P.K. Jainji, right now, many people will believe that it is very late. My question to you is, if we ban them now, will we be able to weed out every single radical, every single person who is acting with this government, with this outfit? Because two layers, top two to three tiers are now behind bars or cramped down, but they're still mobilizing and organizing. That's how deeply rooted they are and well entrenched they are.
Anand, this is a fact that the organization has already grown beyond a point. And, if you remember, many activists of the erstwhile SIMI, which has been banned, of which a number of top leadership is already in the jail, they have joined and they have formed PFI and taken it to places. There's no second thought about it. And the intentions are all disruptive, anti-national, and bordering on terrorism. Government of Kerala, which has nothing to do with BJP, which they keep hounding out, has in its own affidavit has stated that the first case, which was of Professor Joseph, which was in 2012, and subsequent about 27 political murders are ascribed to this particular organization only. Now, you have all very categorically and very nicely analyzed the situation that unless we have got proof, the detaining body will not order the detention, or they will throw out the detention process. The same thing happened with SIMI. The High Court of that particular state threw out the proposal, and eventually it had to be taken to Supreme Court, and Supreme Court took a different view, and they allowed the banning of the organization. Similarly, in this case, though the activities of PFI have been noticed, their footprint has been noticed in many other situations, many other incidents in the country where they have tried to create large-scale disturbances in the society. Yet the government of India has not been able to pinpoint and put them into one thread. Now it all probably started escalating about 2-3 months ago, when there was a concerted effort in Bihar where the Prime Minister's life itself was at risk, and where they got a lead that this organization, what kind of activities they are trying to plan and plot. And from there, the entire exercise started, though the intelligence agencies have been working on it for a long time. But the actual impetus to against this organization came from Bihar. And now, a lot of effort, lot of intelligence went into it as to whom to search, whom to conduct raids on and things like that, which has now culminated into this, whatever has been happening over the last few days. And I'm sure that this is only the beginning. The real result will come out. But now the intelligence agencies, NIA and all these people will have adequate evidence and proof on record to ask for the putting a ban on this organization. And once the organization has been banned, anybody associated with it will be legal action will be taken against him. But as you have again very rightly said, they are very nimble-footed. They will immediately cross over to some other organization. SDPI, PFI, Campus Front of India, there are a whole lot of other organizations which are working under their umbrella, and a whole lot of many other organizations with which they are formulating, their associations with, very deep-rooted associations with, who are all actively working against the interest of the country. All those organizations probably will come on the radar, but taking action against them will again take some more time, unless there's irrefutable evidence against them. So at this stage, I see only a ban coming on the PFI and maybe on Campus Front of India. Nothing beyond that. SDPI will probably take its own time to be banned. So once this ban is imposed, then probably Government of India's hand will be stronger in terms of fishing out more operatives, more sleeper cells, more people who are associated with it. It's going to take time. But I can dare say today that this is only the beginning. The action now is the beginning, though it is a little late. But I hope it is not too less as far as the action on this organization is concerned. They are absolutely disruptive, anti-national and a terrorist organization, which one should not have any doubt about. Now, talking of Ghazwa-e-Hind in 2047 may be a wishful thinking. I mean, Ghazwa-e-Hind could not happen when the Mughals were ruling this country. So if Hindus and the other communities could survive at that time, I'm sure that Ghazwa-e thing today is a wishful thinking. But any attempt towards that objective, which would be full of violence, which would be full of terrorist strikes, which would be full of bomb blasts here and there, what is happening in Kerala today. All these things the country will have to go through. So it is a very difficult time. We will have to be very careful about attacks on the RSS, attacks on BJP leaders. All these things will have to be now taken very, very seriously. We cannot be complacent about it. And I think a time has come when a very, very stern and strict action has to be taken against these elements, whoever they are. We cannot compromise the security and integrity of this country, in whichever way it is threatened or likely to be threatened.
True. No, very well said, because it just goes back to that book written by Dr. Vikram Sampath, and you must be wondering why I take his name so often here on the show, because there is so much fact there. 1922 to 1930, exactly 100 years ago, those 8 years witnessed perhaps the highest concentration of communal riots across the length and breadth of the erstwhile Akhand Bharat, or undivided India. That broke the backbone of the structure of our society. The number of riots that happened did not even happen. We did not see that kind of atrocities in that intensity or density even during the entire Mughal period. But in those 8-10 years, in this 1920 to 1930, this period, and those 8 years, 1922 to 1930, that's what's also written in that in terms of information, very well documented. That is something which we cannot afford a repeat of exactly 100 years later. It just sometimes just feels, Nirva Mehta, that this whole cycle is repeating itself a century later. The same talk about Khilafat. You have Khilafat 2.0 groups like that who are, again, they are loosely associated with members of the PFI, or those people are going in both ways. You have talk of Intifada. You're talking about, again, Caliphate. You're talking about the fact that only this 25-30% has the right to rule this country. The remaining 70% don't have any right to rule this country. We are the ones who will control this country, and we will convert this entire country. This Ghazwa-e-Hind, all of this was pushed around that time. We saw these riots. This organization is not something, it's got a new face, but the thought process is the old one. It's the same. They themselves have mirrored, they have mirrored themselves with the Muslim Brotherhood. So this ideology comes from the very clear core pan-Islamist bent. Now all of this was known to everybody, yet they have been allowed to operate 15 frontal organizations. Yet they have been allowed themselves to embed themselves in 23 states and union territories. They have got political parties which are allying with national political parties in many states and getting patronage, and they are embedding themselves. So a lot of erstwhile or former PFI members are now working with other parties. So you cannot even pinpoint say, अरे ये PFI का है, SDPI का है, CPI का है या नहीं है, नहीं मालूम आपको, because ये दूसरी पार्टी में बैठ के काम कर रहे हैं, वहां जाके फिर ये एजेंडा चलाएंगे. आप कैसे पकड़ोगे इनको? बैन कर दिया तो फिर ये सब छुप जाएंगे. Nirva Mehta, so how do we solve this? Should we ban? Should the government ban? Or should the government wait and say, और आओ निकल के, सब धीरे, let's weed them out and cripple them totally, make them totally defunct and then ban them?
I can't hear.
Can you hear me, Nirva Mehta? Ambar Zaidi, let me take the question with you and we'll try and sort the audio out with Nirva. Yes, Ambar Zaidi.
I cannot hear your question. If you could repeat the question. Or
Can you hear me, Ambar Zaidi, now?
Yeah, I can hear you, yes.
You can. And Nirva Mehta, could you hear my question?
I didn't hear your question. I just heard what you said.
So how do we do? My question is very simple, Ambar Zaidi, Nirva Mehta first. Should the government go ahead and ban right away, or should the government weed out each and every person who's somewhere connected with this organization, cripple this organization and its fronts and affiliates totally, make them defunct, and then go ahead and ban this organization?
See, unfortunately, I don't see any way on how banning or even crackdown on them will even help, because it sounds very pessimistic right now. But imagine they have changed hands so many times and changed so many different avatars, if you so to say, that from SIMI, some of the members became PFI, now PFI has SDPI, it has Campus Front of India. PFI members have infiltrated so many other groups, including media, mainstream media. They are part of, they are journalists. They masquerade as journalists in media. They write their own agenda. They create a whole propaganda about, whitewashing their crimes, creating fake narratives. So I don't see how we are going to even get a solution out of this. Because if you see SIMI, for example, before PFI, SIMI was that banned terror organization. They had infiltrated the campuses. They terrorized, they had radicalized students. One of the outshoots of SIMI was Indian Mujahideen, the terror organization carried out terror attacks across India. So even if we ban, Simi was banned. Look at where we are now. Things have not gone better; they've gone for the worse. So banning PFI, detaining the members, at least the known members, members who are registered or in the face or openly associated with the organization, we may detain them, arrest them, but there will someone else who will come up and take their place. So I don't know how we are going to, arrest the radicalization, despite arresting people who are radicalized and or encouraging radicalization. So at this point, I really don't know. It sounds very, very dystopian right now that maybe we are just kind of doomed.
No, you're really writing the doomsday story here. That's not the case because they don't have large amount of support. Even in their Mission 2047 document, they said they wanted at least 10% of the Muslim population support in the country. And hats off to this country that 10% of the Muslims don't support PFI also. It's not even wanted to go. There is a large-scale reaction. There is a large-scale rejection to this. See, I was speaking to somebody earlier in the day, Ambar Zaidi, and they said, and like PK Janji was saying, that this entire agenda of Ghazwa, Hind, etc. did not work even during the time of the Mughals. And see, even if you were to see Al-Qaeda, Daesh and all, yes, there have been little pockets of, influences in our country, but they didn't take root in our country. It was rejected.
Absolutely right.
At the peak across the world, they didn't take root here
India,
because largely society has rejected such radicalism.
Absolutely, you have mentioned a very important point because the Muslims of India doesn't, incline or follow the PFI agenda. Over 200 PFI activists have been arrested from different states by our agencies, and in its biggest operation against terrorism, terror funding, and anti-India movement. Until date, PFI has been accused of cementing trouble in Hathras, anti-CA protests, Bangalore violence, Delhi riots, hijab row, Jharkhand love, jihad, angles and all these things. But the thing is that, Anand, that PFI, organizations like PFI are biggest threat to our national security. We have to understand that. And we have to stand united against such organizations who are radicalizing the young minds of our country. And thankfully, the Muslims doesn't stand with PFI. Only handful of people, supports and their agenda. They must have some, their vested interest or something. We have different like organizations like PFI, PFI, SDPFI. Again, the biggest challenge comes in front of the security agencies and the government that how should we ban that mindset? Banning organizations is easy. It took more than 7 years to ban PFI. And it takes a lot of time, energy, and to do the groundwork by intelligence and other agencies. But again, the question comes at how to ban such mindset. The anti-India and Ghazwa and all that Mission 2047. Thankfully, our agencies are working in the right direction and things are moving in the right direction. But again, the biggest challenge is that, and we need, I think, sensitization of our young mind. We need to make them more nationalistic so that they can understand in a better way that how to stand with the democracy, that we should be standing in entire India is standing with the
there are, Ambar Zaidi, the concern is that there are 25 crore Muslims in our country, if not more.
Absolutely.
And even if out of that, even if 20,000, it's a very small percentage out of 25 crores, hardly anything. But 20,000 individually is a huge number. And these 20,000 can wreak a lot of havoc across society. They can damage society. They can damage the image of our country. More importantly, derail our growth story as a nation.
Even 5, because
correct.
They can. It is the biggest threat on our national security, and at any cost we cannot.
It's not just about national security. It is derailing our growth story. It's destroying our lives. The next 25 years are ours globally, sociologically, if you were to see, geopolitically, if you were to see, we are poised at that position. These are people who are ready to deny an entire nation that just because they believe that doing so will further their agenda, which is somewhere rooted in Pan-Islam. Now that's a problem. That's the problem we need to have. I just, before I go back to Rajenderji, quickly just taking our viewers through this aspect, ladies and gentlemen, that they have global footprint. Big wake-up call, because in UAE there are regular visits by PFI leaders from Kerala to Abu Dhabi, Dubai. The PFI leadership also visits Muslim Brotherhood strongholds. Money laundering they are involved in. There are Hawala operation hubs also. Real estate and car rental businesses are also run where the PFI has their pie in the till or finger in the till. The operations are fronted by Special Forum, ISF and Indian Fraternity Forum in Saudi Arabia. They are operating in that country also. They lure Indian nationals during Hajj and try and collect donations from them. Also recruit their cadre for operations. Money is also sent to India via Hawala, gold smuggling. Funds are also pumped in via e-wallets in the name of legal aid. So they know how to work the system. They use the system to try and once again rotten the system from within. So they use the system to abuse the system. Oman, they work under Social Forum umbrella and with the ISF and the IFF, the Kerala wing of the PFI also is present there. They propagate radical ideology via Tarbiya. Then there is big Hawala funding. 44 lakh have been sent to India. Money is sent directly to Rehab India Foundation. These accounts and this money has been frozen, seized now. There are multiple fronts that do this. SF, ISF, WFS, WSK. They've just created so many tentacles to this. There are operations in Turkey also. There are operations in as many as 7 different nations in the Middle East. And they're all trying to tap the Indian diaspora. Other countries where they operate in: Bahrain, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Maldives, Bangladesh, Mauritius. 500 million have been sent for PFI after Hathras gang rape case. And of course, Maldives, there have been false blasphemy charges that were leveled against Hindus and Christians. So there are multiple operations. I'm also reminded of Jesai Deepak, where in his second book, India, Bharat, Pakistan, he's building up to this story that contrary to the thought process where Sanskriti se Samvidhan hota hai, our Samvidhan is trying to dictate Sanskriti. And somewhere our constitutions, which is supposed to protect everybody's interests, is largely protecting the interests of those who don't believe in the constitution. Rajinder Kumarji, that's what's happening.
Anandji, main problem is that here in India, the mainstream political parties, like Congress, the Communist Party, Marxist, the CPI, what they did, they passed a resolution in assembly that you please leave Madani, release Madani. How is it? In Karnataka, they did the same thing. So he lived like a king. When the mainstream political parties, they harbor these anti-national elements, I have no compunction in saying that it is the mainstream political party which are adding fertilizer to the growth of these anti-national and terrorist groups. PFI is nothing but a terrorist group. Its main agenda is terrorism. And what is the Khilafat movement? Who brought the Khilafat movement in 1920? It was Khilafat is the ideology of this group. And who brought it? Congress.
Congress.
So we have to be very clear now. We have to be very clear now is the time that all the political parties, there has to be some initiative that all the political parties are taken into confidence, particularly mainstream political parties. You can't take everybody into you can't say that Jamaat-e-Islami should also be taken into confidence. But there are political parties and some of the Islamic groups, Muslim groups, they have to be taken into confidence because it is ultimately the common Muslim who suffers from these people. They are bringing shame to the honest, decent Muslim who lives and earns his livelihood, who lives peacefully. They are branded as terrorists. Now, let me tell you, I know some of my friends who were extremely secular. In fact, I used to make fun of their secularism. Today, even they say, yeah, what is happening? The way they are spreading the radicalism. India would become biggest country of radicals in the world. Today, Saudi Arabia has controlled it, UAE has controlled it, Qatar has controlled it, Kuwait has controlled it, even Egypt has controlled it. Egypt is the main place where this Muslim Brotherhood grew up. They have controlled it. But where it is growing? It is growing in India. Who is to blame? It is the people in the government in India in the over the period from 1980 onwards. Because for our political benefits, we have been pampering them.
Right.
There has to be some sort of this thing. And
Right.
today we have some of the people, I am sorry to say, somewhere in the institutions, they make some very respectable institutions make comments that media is feeding the hate. Now this gentleman doesn't understand any damn thing. And
Sir,
he doesn't understand this
Sir, I'll tell you
situation
what.
in his home state.
I'll tell you what, sometimes guilty conscience pricks the mind. So let's leave it there, leave it at that, and let's not get into what others are saying. Let's do what we have to do. We got to do our job and our karma. Right now, sir, my karma is that I have to interrupt this debate because there's a big development that's happened and we're going to go to that. True to the spirit of news, Nirva Mehta will be interested to know that Vijay Nair has been arrested. Big breaking that's coming through right now, ladies and gentlemen. The CEO of OML, very close aide, and I'm going straight to this breaking format at this point because this is big news. It's flashing on the bottom of our screens. The CBI has arrested Vijay Nair, who is a close associate of Manish Sisodia, the Delhi Deputy Chief Minister. They have moved ahead to make this arrest. He's the CEO of OML. As per the FIR of the CBI, we'll try and get Arunima on the phone line and Ashish Merishi also in 30 seconds. Vijay Nair was actively involved in irregularities in framing and implementation of the excise policy of GNCTD of Delhi for the year 2021-2022. That's what the CBI FIR says. Vijay Nair has been arrested by the CBI in this entire excise policy matter, and there have been serious case. This is a big development because this is right at the doorstep of Manish Sisodia. So one step before the arrest of Manish Sisodia is a question that comes to mind. Let's go across to Arunima for more details. Arunima, big move by the CBI.
Yes, the Central Bureau of Investigation has gone ahead and arrested Vijay Nair. He's the former CEO of an event management company called Only Much Louder. It is believed that he started associating himself with the Aam Aadmi Party ahead of assembly elections here in Delhi. He was then called an ad hoc worker, but subsequently reports suggested that he became quite close to the Deputy Chief Minister. Allegations were also made that he was quite close to the Chief Minister of Delhi. CBI has moved in for his arrest. If you see the FIR, the original FIR in this talks about his role and questions as to how somebody who's not a bureaucrat, who's not in any way connected with the liquor business, and who's not a politician, how is he, associated with the decisions that have been taken with regards to the excise policy. Just to quote the FIR said that he was actively involved in quote-unquote irregularities in framing and implementation of the excise policy of GNCTD, which is the government of Delhi, for the year 2021-22. This is what the FIR stated. This is the first arrest that has happened. Manish Sisodia and Arvind Kejriwal have dared CBI time and again to arrest them if there is evidence. One has to wait and see if this is the first step that the CBI has taken.
No, but there are a lot of things that they had said. But is the CBI now moving into or closing in on Manish Sisodia? That's the other question. I'm just going to quickly check Nirva Mehta if she's still there with us. A quick comment because the Op India has also been following this story very closely. But Arunima, what happens next? Is there going to be more to it? Is this perhaps the one step before the arrest of Manish Sisodia, or the CBI knocks on the door of Manish Sisodia?
Early to say that, Anand, but the very fact that this person has been arrested means that CBI has some evidence. They've taken their time, even though this matter was highly political, and there were a lot of political back and forth between the BJP and the Aam Aadmi Party on this matter. CBI has taken its time. It has considered the evidence that it has recovered so far during the searches, and after those preliminary consideration of the evidence, it has moved in for the first arrest.
Right.
Now the steps to be followed is that they're going to seek custody of Nair from the court. He will be produced in court in the next 24 hours, and then his questioning will begin. He will be confronted with the evidence that CBI already has collected. Based on what he tells CBI, we would know what the next course of action would be.
Right, Arunima, thank you. Thank you for your inputs. Big development this. We are tracking all that's happening around the excise policy crackdown and investigation very closely. Breaking right this evening on the right stand that Vijay Nair, CEO of OML, close aide of Manish Sisodia, has been arrested by the CBI in the excise policy matter. We're going to take a very, very short break. When we come back, ladies and gentlemen, we're following and tracking the Jaishankar-Blinken meet. There will be a debrief. We have Brahma Chalani and Raymond Vikri joining us. If anybody has any confusion about India's worldview, just listen to the plain speak by S Jaishankar. Stay with us.
Affidavits to be submitted in favor that Eknath Shinde is the real leader of this party at this moment of time. And this is what would be very, very crucial. And we will have to see as to how the Uddhav camp actually tries to put in its word that it is the real leader of the party. Because as you rightly pointed it out, it's the numbers that play the game, not the legacy at this point of time. Though a detailed order of the Supreme Court is yet to come into this particular case as to why this particular order has been passed and what reasoning has been given. But we can actually decipher it from the arguments that will win there. In fact, the governor of Maharashtra also was in the favor. He was being represented by Solicitor General of India, Tushar Mehta, who clearly pointed it out that Election Commission of India is actually an independent body. It's a constitutional body and does not come in the way of the House and is a very, very different proceeding that takes place before the Election Commission of India, and hence it can proceed independently and does not have to do anything with what happens inside the House.
Did the court say? Did the court say that? Did the court opine or say whether or not once the ACI makes its ruling, can the Uddhav camp or anybody come back to the court? Was there any comment on that front, Ananya? We are also trying to get back Vinay Deshpande with us and also try for somebody from the Eknath Shinde camp to get their reaction. But did the court say that once the ECI finishes its ruling and decides, then whichever party that feels aggrieved can come back to us? Was there any comment made to that effect?
Well, Anand, the thing is that at this moment of time, because the court was already wrapping up, the court just said that the EC procedure has been done away with. Nothing else was said. But this is a general sense of law that if a person is aggrieved by certain kind of order, whether it's the Election Commission of India's order or some other order, it can definitely approach the Supreme Court. And any of the camps, whether it's the Eknath Shinde or the Uddhav Thackeray camp, if they are aggrieved by the Election Commission of India's order, they can definitely use their legal remedies to come before the Supreme Court and in fact seek a detailed hearing. And it's on the Supreme Court later on whether it would actually go into it or would want
admittedly,
to
because that's exactly what happened with the LJP. I'm just looking at the LJP playbook and how it played out. Somebody tried to go to court, then the ECI ruled, and then they went back to court and said, no, the ECI ruling stands. Did something similar happen? Because that is very ominous for the Uddhav faction. If it is the Election Commission, then they have a precedence in the recent past with the Lok Jan Shakti Party. And there again, it was not the Paswan Sayan who got the control of the party. It was the uncle Pashupati Paras who got the control of the party because he had the numbers and also the party symbol.
Well, yes, Anand, that is being discussed as one of the precedents in this case. But at this point, let me tell you, both the sides aren't really willing to talk speculative. It clearly is Eknath Shinde's case that he has the numbers when it comes to the MLAs and MPs. But with respect to the party structure, especially the organizational structure, that is something that we will have to see on paper whether Eknath Shinde will be able to muster that kind of strength. Because in Maharashtra itself, where the Shiv Sena is a regional party, imagine in a place like Mumbai, which is going to pulse in the next few months. There are 37,000 Gata Pramukhs only. So if we are talking of office bearers and party officials and the entire party structure, the game is not so easy. It is going to be tough for both the sides, and it's also going to be a long, winding road ahead. It's not that the Election Commission will start hearing the matter and there will likely be a decision anytime sooner, is a kind of realization that both the sides seem to have. So there is also a sense of anxiety about the symbol in the meantime, because till the time the Election Commission decides on the plea of Eknath Shinde, on the claim for the real Shiv Sena, What if the party symbol gets frozen? What if the party symbol till that time is given to somebody else? In all those scenarios,
Right.
both the factions are trying to prepare themselves. So while there is a realization that for both the factions there's going to be a long winding road ahead, this clearly at this juncture is a setback for Uddhav
Right.
Thackeray.
The Honorable Supreme Court has now decided, after a huge number of arguments that were made, and fervent pleas were made, that the court rule on it. The court has said, no, we are not going to decide. Who is the real Shiv Sena? This question will be answered by the Election Commission as per rules. As per rules that govern and decide the functioning of a political party, and it is the Election Commission of India, which is a constitutional body in itself, that will deem who is in control of the party. It's not about legacy, it's not about name, it's not about who is the current president, etc. It is about what the rules say as to who controls the party or who is deemed to be in control of the party. That is the big judgment coming in, or ruling coming in from the Honorable Supreme Court. Let's get the details from Ananya before we bring in Vinaya Deshpande, because this is going to get a lot of things rolling and set a few things in motion in Maharashtra too politically. Hey Vinaya, what does this mean for politics in Maharashtra? Because Eknath Shinde and Devendra Fadnavis together have been saying it is Eknath Shinde who's the real Shiv Sena, Bala Saheb Shiv Sena, this is who Eknath Shinde is, and this is who, they are the ones who have the right to the bow and arrow symbol.
Well, Anand, clearly this is a setback for Uddhav Thackeray, because remember that Uddhav Thackeray has approached the Supreme Court saying that at this point the Election Commission cannot decide who does the party belong to. The fact that the Supreme Court has said that the Election Commission can go ahead and decide on the claim of Eknath Shinde clearly means that it will now decide on who does the symbol belong to and who does the party belong to. So at such a crucial juncture, when the symbol is in question, when Eknath Shinde
a relationship that has neither ended up serving Pakistan well nor serving it. So it is really for the United States today to reflect whether this, what are the merits of it.
Those who politicize the UNSC 1267 sanctions regime, sometimes even to the extent of defending proclaimed terrorists, they do so at their own peril. If you look at the whole 370 issue, what was a temporary provision of the Constitution was finally put to rest. This was supposed to be majoritarian. Now tell me, what was happening in Kashmir was not majoritarian.
Signature of Naya Bharat, even as the EAM speaks firm. Jaishankar talks tough, it's straight talk, it's simple, but it's very, very clear. When you have absolute clarity, then you are able to say the most complex things most simply. Professor Brahma Chalani is with us, Raymond Vikri, Senior Associate at the Center for Strategic and International Studies with us. Professor Brahma Chalani is Strategic Affairs expert and of course a very, very famed columnist and thinker. Let me ask you, Professor Brahma Chalani, do you believe that Subramaniam Jaishankar is taking what is India's worldview and he's got absolute clarity on it?
I'm losing you, Anand. I can only hear parts of what you're saying.
Can you hear me now? Am I audible? All right, we'll try and sort the line out with Professor Brahmachalani. But Raymond Vikri, good to have you with us. Thank you. How would you see Mr. Jaishankar's responses to the questions that have been posed vis-a-vis US, Pak, China?
Well, I think that this is a great opportunity for these two greatest democracies on earth to cement the partnership further. I think that the tone should not be, hey, can we demonstrate how independent we are from the United States, but what can India and the U.S. do together? Using language like you're not fooling anybody does not, in my view, further that goal. It might be said, hey, you're not fooling anybody by trying just to talk about Pakistan and Kashmir when there are wider global issues, Ukraine, China, threats to India and the United States. So the real point here is that these meetings ought to be used and these visits ought to be used to further the partnership rather than to try to score political points about how independent one nation is from the other.
But what happens, Mr. Vikri, is the fact that everything cannot be seen from America's point of view. If Mr. Jaishankar puts out India's point that if you are saying that you are selling F-16s to Pakistan for anti-terror operations, that's a laughable suggestion. So, and if he turns around and says America has to choose, which nation does it have to gain more if you engage with it more? Is that an unfair point?
Is it really in India's interest to have the United States completely disengage with Pakistan? I don't think so. It seems to me that we have shown our hostility to some of the Pakistanis, including giving shelter to Osama bin Laden, including to giving shelter to the Taliban. And we should work on those together. But the approach ought to be, yes, how can we change policies if it's necessary? How can we attack the Haqqani network? What can we do to bring peace and stability to the world throughout the area? So it's not just a question of whether or not that's a correct thing to say. The question is it useful in terms of furthering the U.S.-India relationship, and how can it best be attacked as a diplomat rather than someone trying to show for a political reason how independent you are.
But the point is that America should not have India's views as conditional to what it does with Pakistan, just like India will not have, if you expect India to not have its views conditional to how US engages with Pakistan. America should also not have, America also needs to see it in that aspect, because you cannot, on the one hand, empower a nation with F-16s for anti-terror ops, while saying, hey, we found you patronizing Ayman al-Zawahiri. The Haqqani network has been propped up as 50% of the government in Taliban in Afghanistan by Pakistanis. And you just now said that the Americans have an interest in taking down the Haqqani network. The Americans knew that the Haqqanis were going to be in the seat of power and government there. So, Professor Brahmachalani is with us. Professor Brahmachalani, what do you think is Mr. Jaishankar doing? Is he putting forth India's point of view and India's worldview very, very firmly there? Or is this plain speak going to hurt us diplomatically? As Mr. Raymond Vikri says, this is not how nations should be speaking if they want to work together.
Well, I think first it's important to remember that Jaishankar was addressing Indian Americans. So he's basically trying to manage the media back home. This is not really tough talk. It's not plain speak to the Americans. It is like, doing public relations in a way. The fact is that the relationship between India and the US is strong. India holds more annual military exercises with America than with any other country. US arms sales to India, are booming. In fact, they went from near zero to 20 billion in about 12 years, actually, from 2008 to 2020. The issue is this, that the American policy decisions and actions are compounding India's regional challenges. How can a friend of India do things that are inimical to India's strategic interests? Yet look at the developments since last year when Biden surrendered Afghanistan to a terrorist militia. And then see the latest developments of this month. The way the Biden administration is embracing Pakistan, the way it's seeking to co-opt, to engage with the Taliban. There are a series of concessions that are being made by Washington to the Pakistan-Taliban combined, and these concessions are going to haunt India's security. And look at the paradox. One day, with American help, Pakistan secures a $1.1 billion bailout from the IMF to help avert a debt default. And then just 6 or 7 days later, Washington cuts a deal with Islamabad, a $450 million deal with a bankrupt nation to modernize its F-16 fleet. And to make matters worse, Washington claims that the modernization of the F-16s is for counterterrorism. And that's a joke, right? And then with the Taliban, the Americans say we do not negotiate with the terrorists. And yet, periodically, the U.S. is cutting deals with designated terror groups. In the latest case, the U.S. released a convicted Taliban drug lord, a narcotics kingpin who was serving a life sentence in the U.S. They exchanged him for an obscure American who had been kidnapped by the Haqqani network, a U.S. designated terror group. So here is a case of the Americans negotiating with a terrorist group that they themselves designate as a terrorist entity. Yes, so, and then easing the sanctions on the Taliban regime gradually. There has been a gradual easing of American sanctions on the Taliban. So concessions to the Pakistan-Taliban combined are inimical to India's long-term interests.
Raymond Vickery, would you want to respond?
I fully agree that remarks were made for domestic Indian consumption, but you have to know that when you're speaking publicly in the United States, it's not going to just impact the domestic politics. Now, each of these points may be valid, but the point is not to go back to the same old of the United States raises Russia, and so the India raises Pakistan. And so we don't really talk about the global problems in terms of China, in terms of providing a rule of law and democracy in the world. What we do is we go back to the old Cold War mentality of Pakistan was with the U.S. and India was really with Russia. So that doesn't work. In Afghanistan, it is absolutely true that the whole 20-year history was a debacle. It did not work out. It didn't work out for India. It didn't work out for the U.S. We spent $2 trillion there. We spent thousands and thousands of American lives, and it was wrong. We didn't work it out. Now, the way forward, though, is to see how India and the U.S. might cooperate more fully and what needs to be corrected. If there is something that's done wrong, that's fine for partners to be able to talk about it. But the U.S. feels that the India is an indispensable partner, and it has tried to is trying to further that. Now, is the U.S. making mistakes? Yeah. Is India making mistakes? Yes, India is doing it. But for a diplomat to say, "Who do you think you're fooling?" then that invites somebody on the other side to say, well, who do you think you're fooling by trying to bring up
but then that response came because the American side said they are refurbishing the F-16s for anti-terror operations. You'd never use F-16s for anti-terror operations. So the American government also should not have made a statement like that. That's what prompted this remark. So you're looking at the effect, but you're not looking at the cause. The effect is not the cause. The cause is different. That came from the American side, and those actions. So let America be very clear that they have stated objectives. They they have their interest in getting back on the Shamsi air base. They want their roots dug into Pakistan yet again because they don't want the Chinese to take over there. Let them be candid about it. We're going to see that joint briefing in a bit. Let's see what the two leaders have to say. But I thank our panelists. We're going to wind up the right stand, making way for brass tacks. Zakar's ready.
Good evening, this is Brass Tacks. I'm Zakar Jacob. After the open turf war in the Congress party in Rajasthan, the Congress High Command appointed observers came back to Delhi and submitted their report to interim President Sonia Gandhi. Now the report, we're given to understand, does not directly blame Gehlot, but it has sent show cause notices to his key ministers and aides, Shanti Dhariwal, Dharmendra Rathod and Mahesh Joshi. Remember, these are close associates of the Chief Minister. These were the people who were at the forefront of the rebellion that we saw on Sunday and Monday. But the bigger and more pertinent question is, could such an open rebellion have happened without Mr. Gehlot's knowledge, if not his consent? Did the High Command completely underestimate Gehlot's support within the CLP and overestimate its own assessment of the situation on the ground? And most importantly, what happens now to the race to be Congress president? Can Gehlot still be convinced to be made Congress president, or will it send the wrong message that a person who is openly rebelling is now being pushed for the top post in the party? But first, let's listen into the story.
From falling out of favor to possibly being in with a chance, the jury's still out on Ashok Gehlot's fate in the upcoming Congress presidential elections. His refusal to give up the post of Rajasthan Chief Minister to arch-rival Sachin Pilot triggered a rebellion in the party's Rajasthan unit.
100% वही था, षड्यंत्र था टोटल, और उस षड्यंत्र में जनरल सेक्रेटरी इंचार्ज शामिल थे.
Despite a majority of MLAs in the Gehlot camp refusing to meet central observers and holding a parallel meeting, the party is only taking disciplinary action against a few of them, and Gehlot is getting a clean chit. Gehlot himself spoke to Sonia Gandhi and conveyed that he meant no disrespect towards the top leadership.
Only with the High Command they have to take it. सब ठीक हो जाएगा, सब ठीक हो जाएगा, चिंता करने की कोई जरूरत नहीं.
Sachin Pilot, whose supporters are outnumbered by Gehlot's, reached Delhi this evening and dodged questions from the media. The divide in Rajasthan comes at a time when Rahul Gandhi is leading Congress's Bharat Jodo Yatra, walking 3,570 kilometers from Kanyakumari to Kashmir.
खुद कांग्रेस पार्टी अपनी चतुराई के चक्रव्यूह में बुरी तरह से फंस गई, जो कि खुद अपने पार्टी और अपने परिवार को नहीं संभाल पा रहे हैं. वो देश मांग रहे हैं कि हमें देश जो है वो हमारे हवाले कर दो.
This is hardly the first time that Gehlot has flexed his political clout. So was it a wise decision to begin with to ask him to leave his chair and become party president? Did the Gandhis miscalculate his clout?
And we're getting breaking news just hours after central observers submitted their report to Sonia Gandhi. Show cause notices have now been issued to 3 Gehlot MLAs, Shanti Dhariwal, Mahesh Joshi and Dharmendra Rathod, for holding parallel meetings. So far, we don't know of any direct action against Mr. Gehlot. But let me go across to Pallavi Ghosh, who's breaking that story for us. What may this mean by issuing show cause notices to 3 of his key allies, key ministers and MLAs, Mr. Dhariwal, Mr. Joshi and Mr. Rathod? A, what signal is the High Command trying to send? And B, more importantly, is there anything in the report that implicates Mr. Gehlot for what happened on Sunday?
So if you look at the copy of those 3 show-cause notices, it gives 10 days time, Zaka, to all these 3 MLAs who are considered close to Ashok Gehlot, and essentially asking them, 1, why were they absent from the CLP meeting? 2nd, why did they engineer a kind of a resignation, and saying that this is a violation of the party discipline, and within 10 days they'll have to respond to it, failing which action could be taken against them. In the 9-page report which has been submitted, Zaka, is essentially a sequence of events and what happened in Jaipur. It doesn't give a clean chit to Ashok Gehlot, but it does mention Ashok Gehlot in the sequence of events. The point over here that remains is that why a direct action cannot be taken against him is because Gehlot has maintained this line that he was completely unaware of what the MLAs were doing, and he was not even present there, and therefore he cannot be blamed. He pretty much said the same thing when he spoke to Mrs. Gandhi earlier this evening. So as of now, no action being mulled against Ashok Gehlot, but at least against the 3 of the MLAs who we have shown in that mention in that show-cause notice, the 3 of them can make action, can face action. What does it mean? Well, Zaka, it essentially means no tolerance zone as far as the top leadership is concerned.
But very quickly, you've been covering Congress for a number of years. Could such a rebellion, such an open rebellion, have happened without Mr. Gehlot's knowledge? Forget about consent, but at least certainly his knowledge, number 1. And number 2, by giving 10 days to these people, these 3 gentlemen, to respond, by which time I presume the nomination process for the Congress president will be over. What may that